Hey there, Stationery Squad. Welcome back to my channel where we dive headfirst into the creative side of the stationery world. If you're like me and believe that a great pen and a good notebook can change your life, or at least your to-do list, you've landed in the right place. I'm Kristen Creates, and I'm so glad you're here. So I have been a pen person my whole life. I've been a creative person my whole life. I have been out in the planner world evangelizing all about fountain pens. Some of my friends have signed on to the fountain pen train and now are saying, but Kristen, what do we do with all this? So today, this video is for those people, my lovely planner girls and gals and guys and planner humans, to help you demystify fountain pens, and hopefully you'll fall in love with them too, or at least you'll know a little bit more. So, sounds good to you? If you're already a fountain pen fan, hey, join along and put your tips in the comments because I'm sure I'm going to miss some things. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, or at least that like button, or better yet, leave a comment, something you knew or didn't know. All right, let's get into it. Let's set those pretty pens aside. Why fountain pens? I mean, a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, my Pentel or my Flair, they're working for me. Maybe you've gone out and spent, $20, $30 on a Pen Gems or Villa Beautiful. They are all great and fabulous, but they're not as good as a fountain pen. Well, for one, you're kind of limited. Like, yeah, I could go to Costco and get the 50-pack of Papermate Flairs, but eventually they're all going to run out. You've probably spent $10 to $20 on a pack of Energels, Mujis, G2s, fill in the blank. Eventually, they run out. Can you get a refill for your Pen Gems, Bella Vita? The gemmy kind of pens? Of course you can. But they only come in so many colors. And they only come in so many sizes. And then at the end of the day, you're still throwing something out. Not so with fountain pens. I mean, you could get a disposable one like my husband did in a pack of 10 off of Temu. My first fountain pen was actually something like this. It's a Pilot Varsity. You'll see them in a lot of stationery shops, bookstores, wherever. They're great. They're disposable. Awesome if you've never tried a fountain pen, but we're trying to get away from the disposable world. Enter the fountain pen. If you watch my channel because you're a nice friend, you've been here, great. And you hear me talk about my pens. Pens like these, they're a little spendy. I've worked hard in my life, done a lot of school, making a good salary. Thank you. Amen. May that be the case until I retire. So I have a little bit more budget to spend on this. Don't be intimidated by these pens. There are ways to get started in fountain pens without spending a lot of money. So I'm going to start with those today, and let's look at what is a fountain pen. Here we have one of my favorite beginning fountain pens. This is a Platinum Preppy. It is the entry level, made by the same company as this beautiful Bluebird. This has a steel nib. This has a 14 karat gold nib. So there's going to be a little bit difference in price. This is your cheap Walmart crystals, earrings, diamond earrings, cubic zirconium. This is Tiffany's, just like anything in life. But start here. Unless you fall in love with that one and you've got the money to do it, who am I to stand in your way? So this is a Preppy. Let's look at what makes a fountain pen special is its nib. From big fancy word, capillary action, which we'll talk about. Ink flows through the reservoir. That's this fun part right here. And through the feed, which is this part right here, and out the nib. Simple. The nib slits help make a little line. One of the reasons that I switched to fountain pens, one is, you could see the ink and there's millions of color ink, but I have arthritis in my hands. And while I don't have to write a lot anymore, when I do go for longer writing sessions, my hands do start to ache and cramp. With a fountain pen, I don't have to hold it hardly at all. Very little pressure, which is hard to get used to, especially if you have been used to like super gripping your Pentel Energel. Like, it's going to feel weird to use a fountain pen. So I forgot to mention this Platinum Preppy, less than $10. Probably somewhere in the $6 range, 10 if you buy it with extra inks. My other favorite beginner fountain pen is the Pilot Kakuno. Pilot, it's your friend. If they make the friction, they make the G2, they know what they're doing. They come in multiple different colors. This one happens to be clear. This is the gateway drag. This will run you between $11 and $15. Planner person, do not complain about that $15 because you know that you spent way more than that on stickers last month. This pen, even if it's the only fountain pen you ever get for the rest of your life, it's going to work. You don't have to worry about hoarding it. It doesn't run out. You keep refilling. The Pilot Kakuno comes with instructions. We talked about the nib, talked about the feed. So how do you get ink in there? Well, both of these pens come with cartridges. Cartridges are the easiest way to get started with fountain pen. There are not as many colors and options, but they're great for on the go. So any cartridge, and not every cartridge doesn't fit every pen. So you've got to kind of be careful, but your cartridge will have kind of a lip end. So you take this part and you stick it, and here you can see there's a little pokey thing in there. So you're going to stick the cartridge and you can give it a little pressure until you hear it pop. Now, sorry, I had to bring it a little closer to me to get it to pop, to get the pressure I wanted. But now here's that capillary action. It's moving up the feed. Now, using a fountain pen gives you a moment in your life to breathe. I know, easier said than done. It may not write right away. This is not instant gratification. It's not going to take a long time, but it takes a little bit of, a few minutes to get down the feed by fountain pens. And if you can start writing with it, it'll take a minute. Usually what I do is just set it off to the side. But see how fast that was? That was like 30 seconds. So why do we use fountain pens? They're environmentally friendly. If you can stay out of the rabbit hole that I'm in and just buy one fountain pen, you could have that one perceivably for the rest of your life. Fountain pens last a very long time if well taken care of. That one of my most precious ones, this pen, is from the 1920s. It's 100 years old. Okay, maybe it's from the 40s. At any rate, it's old. And it still writes just as well as that one. Okay, so I've got our Kakuno, and then we just stick a cartridge in. But cartridges, as I said, are kind of limited. They're also a little bit more expensive. So most pens, though they might not necessarily come with it, pens like these can also use converters. A converter works the same way as a cartridge, except that you get to choose what kind of ink goes in it. Filling a cartridge is super easy. So we're going to get out an ink bottle here, and I might have my converter. This converter has a little spindle. Just goes up and down. These little balls help agitate the ink. This is going to be like a vacuum sucker, manual vacuum sucker. So I'm going to put the converter in like this, and I'm going to stick my whole pen nib into the ink, and I'm going to twist. Okay. It's good to have a little towel or something nearby because we're just going to wipe this off. And now you can see that the ink is inside the cartridge converter. And the benefit of this, because we stuck the ink the nib right into the ink. So we stuck our pen right into the ink, our nib right into the ink. So now it is ready to write. Unlike when we had to wait for this friend This one is ready to write right away. Now, not every pen works. Every pen will have a cartridge or cartridge converter, or some pens, like my friend the Twisby here, have piston mechanism, so it's built right into the pen. And you can see that this type of piston filler can hold a lot more ink than this little converter guy. This little converter guy is still about the equivalent, maybe slightly less, than what you'd find in your Pentel Intergel. The benefit is you can rinse this one out and have another color, and another color, and another color. Or you can mix them. To summarize, you can use a cartridge or a converter. Some people call them a cartridge converter. Not every converter works with every pen. It's very brand specific, same as cartridge. So when you're buying these things, make sure you're looking for the compatible parts, because this cartridge, it might work okay, but this converter that I put this ink in from the Kikuyo is not going to work in this guy. I forgot to mention the converters are separate, but they're also going to run you under $10. All in, you're still under $20. Or piston. There's a third way called a vac fill, but until you're deep in the rabbit hole, you don't need to know about that one. It's so pretty. I can see that beautiful ink just hanging out in there. Okay, we're back in true Kristen fashion. I was recording all along, and but wasn't really recording, didn't hit the recording button. So I was talking to myself for a really long time about the next important thing to know in fountain pens. So we're going to fix that now. The next important thing when you're shopping, I think beginners get confused because they see nib sizes and you're like, it's a fine, it's a medium, it's a broad. What do I need? What do I want? How do I choose? All that. So let's talk about that for a minute. When they talk about nib sizes, now we know that this camera does not like to focus on small things. Okay, so when it comes to nib sizing, nibs refers to really how much metal or material is making up the tipping part of the nib. So at the very top, the more material that's up here, the broader the stroke is be. So this one that I'm holding now is a broad. So we've got a big round circle here that's going to make a difference in our letter sizes. As composed to an extra fine, we're probably not going to see very much circle metal material at all. On left is an extra fine, so barely anything on the top compared to the broad on the right-hand side. That probably doesn't make any difference to you until you really play around with these, what your letters look like. This is a Sterling ink notebook, which is what I use in my planners. I've got it set up. I have all of my pens from the same manufacturer kind of lined up here to the side in order from nib size from small to large. It's important to note that nib size is not universal. It changes based on manufacturer, on metal type. So an extra fine or a fine in Twisby is going to be very different than an extra fine or a fine in another pen. Well, we're doing Twisbys because that's the one that I have all the colors in. All right. So this is an extra fine. And since I don't have all these currently inked up, I'm just dipping in some ink that's right in front. And I'm just going to line up as close as I can to the grid, putting one letter in each grid. Okay, so that is our extra fine. Maybe I'll do a little serpentine here. And then when we're looking at nib lengths, what people look at is what does the downstroke look like? What does the cross stroke look like? Other thing to know about nib sizes is that the wider the tipping is, the better that it will show ink properties. So an extra fine or fine, even though I have this lovely ink, and I actually probably should have distributed a little bit more. But I'm working with this Diamine Tranquility. It's got a lot of shimmer. You can see that there on the bottom. Shimmer tends to clog extra fine and fine nibs if you load it all the way up into a pen. Since we're just dip testing, I'm okay with using that. And actually, TWSBIs are really pretty famous for being okay. At least in my experience, I've never had a problem with a shimmer, but like I wouldn't put a shimmer in a fine pilot unless it was the Kakuno. That some inks are wet and some inks are dry, and I know that's weird when you talk about a liquid, but you'll know. And the same with some nibs are dry, and so we'll say dry. It's how well the ink flows out. Sometimes the tines in between to kind of help flow will get wonky, and that will slow things down. So at first glance, you really can't see. I mean, we're talking whatever is smaller than a millimeter in terms of differential between extra fine and fine. So in that case, if I were going to buy a new pen, if I wanted an extra fine and they only had fine, I'd probably be okay. I don't love the extra fine. Also, the thinner it is, the scratchier I think it is. But I started with an extra fine because I thought at the time my favorites were the Pentel Energel, needlepoint, and a G2. So I thought I needed something extra fine, and it was only when I started to really get in and play and then want to shimmer and wanted to see all the shimmers that I went up to a medium. And I'd say the medium is maybe your 0.7 in a G2. I probably said this already, but mediums are my go-to these days. I feel like I can adjust them. I know that I'm confident they'll work with just about any ink. I don't have to worry about problems with beads clogging. Sometimes the shimmer really gets in the feed and gives you a feeling that not everything is getting out. This is a good example. Okay, so this is a medium nib, and I have my shimmer fire on fire and fire. You can see that in the unboxing, but you can see how much shimmer is just even hanging out on the outside of the feed. Like this pen, even though it's a medium, so doesn't know what to do. Now this particular ink is just jam-packed with shimmer, so I'm not surprised. It's going to be a pain in the butt to clean out. Our next pen is broad. So here's where we start to see the difference between the fine and extra fine and the broads. As you go like one level next to each other, you don't notice the whole change, but when you go in the whole range, the nib sizes, you can see how things are getting bigger just a little bit. In some manufacturers, like the TWSBI, like these guys, nibs are interchangeable. So if I really wanted to use this Amazonite, this kind of marbled teal, but I wasn't feeling abroad this month and I really wanted to use extra fine, I could take the nib from this one and move it into this before I started inking. So the last one is called a stub. Now, a stub is very similar to a calligraphy pen in that doesn't have tipping, like no roundness, so we're going to get straight across, and it's wide across the sides. So most calligraphy pens are fountain pens unless you're dealing with a marker situation, but not all fountain pens are calligraphy pens. And I think that that's something else that confuses people because like, I don't need a fountain pen. I don't do calligraphy. That's a very small subset of fountain pens. So I don't know if you can tell in my writing, at least as I'm writing, but you can see even the edges of letters like the L, we have more of a round. We had the medium and broad, and now we have a straight line across. A stub is going to give you your greatest variety because of the way, because it doesn't have that roundness. The roundness kind of evens out the cross and the down. But in a stub, since we don't have the roundness on the backside and the tipping, we get a really big line variation between the up and down strokes and the side to side. Here's an extra fine. That's your smallest. And then fine, medium. So it's really hard to tell the difference between the extra fine and the fine. this particular ink. Sometimes you can tell a lot, but from an extra fine to a medium, we can start to see the change, and then really from an extra fine to a stub. Most planners, I think, start in the fine. If you think you're gonna fall in love with shimmer inks, you're thinking about your first pen, I would go with a medium. So coming up, here's a little quick grid on the breakdown of each of the nib sizes and what they're good for. Also say that the wider the nib, the more likely that you're going to have bleed through on some papers, which makes things a little challenging. So paper definitely matters. When you're working with fountain pens, it's a three-way equation. It's the ink you're using, and different inks or ink can act different in different pens. Different pens can act different with different inks. And then the paper combination. So there are lots of debates out there about what's the best paper for fountain pens. Tomoe River has been one of the old standbys. They've changed their production, changed ownership, so it's not as consistent as it used to be. Midori, Traveler's Notebook, Stalogy, those are all great for fountain pens. Your basic copier paper, which is actually what I wrote this one on, is just kind of something. No, it's not really fair, but you can see how much bleed through. I mean, I did this with the big, thick parallel pen, so but there's feathering and different things. What you can't use, or I wouldn't recommend, but we're going to test it right now. Now, Happy Planners changed their paper, so I can't remember, but this paper's got to be at least 4 or 5 years old. Okay, will this ink bleed through? Yes, yes it will. There's your answer to there. That was written with the stub. Let's try that extra fine, or fine. So even our fine nib, same kind of thing. So moral of the story, don't use fountain pens on Happy Planner paper. Which might be one of the reasons that I don't use Happy Planners anymore. One of the many. The last thing to know about fountain pens is that you need to clean your pens. So here I have one of my pens. I love this one. It's from Leonardo. And I've had it inked for a couple of months. I've had 2 different colors. So now I want to make sure that I get all of the color cleaned up. I'm probably not going to be able to get it all out today with what I have in front of me because I usually do this in front of a sink, but I'll get the process started. If you have just the cartridge, you'll just take the cartridge out and then run some water through the nib, put a new cartridge in. Just know that there's going to be a little bit of carryover from color to color. If you have a converter, like in our Kakuno or in this Leonardo, or if you have a piston, it's going to work the same way. I'm going to put the nib all the way into the water. And ideally, you'd be starting with clean water. And you're going to have your cartridge, your converter, the piston, near the top. So you push out anything that's in there. And then you're just going to draw water up and push it out. And repeat this process of up and down as many times as you need to until the water onto it. Again, usually I do this over the sink and I have a couple of cups and make sure that the drain covers are in. You can see even here, it's getting lighter, lighter and lighter. Now there are lots of tricks that you can use like syringes or baby snot things that help with this process. You can take the converter off of the nib. You can see here we've gone from very dark purple, very light purple. So we're almost there on this guy. Sometimes I'll put the other dirty ink in another bucket. That's actually a good tip. I should have showed you that here, but when you think you've got most of the ink out, you can just test it on a piece of paper. Make sure there's nothing in there. I like to let my pens dry overnight before I cap them all up, so I'll leave it like this, or sometimes I'll even take the converter and put it on a paper towel and let it dry. And that's that. Now so we know why we use fountain pens. A couple of cons. I think, well, there's 2 main cons to fountain pens. One, they're a little messy. If you don't like seeing ink on your pen or getting ink on your fingers, no, I think it's possible to do fountain penning without getting ink on your fingers, especially if you're using a cartridge. The risk is always there. So if you don't like getting messy, fountain pens are not for you. That's totally okay. The other con to fountain pens is it can, if you fall down this rabbit hole like I have, it can get expensive. And before you know it, you're buying lots of ink and lots of different pens, and you really don't need to do that. And then you'll just be chasing for the next big thing. And so just use caution, because fountain pens are fantastic. And even though I have 50 some, I really only need one. So I hope you give fountain pens a try. Again, I'd say start with, if you don't already have one, start with the Preppy, a Platinum Preppy, or a Pilot Kakuno, and I will put those links down below. Probably links to the big friend that we don't always love to shop at, but I'm not sure they're really the best deal there. From there, I think you can't go wrong with the TWSBI. One is just really fun, comes in so many colors. Or you can get either an Asvine P20 or Jinhao 10. These are also on that big box store, also on Amazon. This one is a dupe of a very famous Pilot pen, and I think it's great for planners just making the transition because it's got the click mechanism and it comes in so many colors. And then there's also the Asvine one. A couple of my friends have picked up this one because it's just so freaking pretty. So that's all. Thank you so much. If you are using fountain pens, tell me where you got started and how. And if you're not using fountain pens and you'd like to give it a shot, well, I think we're going to have a giveaway here. I love fountain pens so much, and I would love to give people that are new to fountain pens a chance to try them out without having to spend a lot of money. So we're going to do a little giveaway. What you need to do is obviously like this video, be a subscriber, and comment on this video and at least one other video. And I am going to give away 5 ink samples, not necessarily these ones right here, just happen to have them on my table. Either the Kakuno or the Preppy. So, and a converter and some ink cartridges. So based on which one you choose, I'll send you ink cartridges and a converter so you can try out some of these inks. And I'm also going to send you a notebook. I put a Stalogy here. This one I've already written in, so I'm not 100% sure if it'll be a Stalogy or something else, but it will definitely be fountain pen friendly and be worth your entry. So 1, make sure that you're subscribed, that you like this video, and 3, leave a comment. But we got to keep the comments kind of sly, right? I want you to leave a comment with a heart in your favorite color and something interesting that you may have learned in this video. All right, but be subtle about those comments because we don't want just the people that watch for two or 3 minutes to figure it out. Okay, editing Kristen here to say a couple more things about this giveaway. 1, we're going to pull the drawing when I get to 200 subscribers. So I think that'll be in about 2 weeks from the end of June when I'm going to be posting this. So yay. And second, it is open to US residents with shipping covered. I'm open to international if you are willing to cover shipping, taxes, all of the things that make my head hurt. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for sticking with me so far. Until next time, I hope everything is going well in your world. Keep being awesome. Bye for now.